Thanks, listeners, for joining us. It's time for Elko Live today here on KELK, and the sun has come out. It's an exciting day. There are a lot of students and teachers and parents and families. This is the time of year where we get to really celebrate achievement, and along with that, we have our school superintendent, CJ Anderson, and of course, Kayla Church is here sitting silently by his side or rooting him on, but Kayla is responsible for so much of the great information that's being circulated, CJ, and I think it's great to be able to acknowledge that work that goes on behind the scenes. She's conducting important research. She's making sure that, you have the information you need, and most of all, that outreach gets to parents in the community, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, thank you for having me on again. It's always great to be here with you. And yeah, absolutely super grateful for Kayla and all she does as our communication specialist. For me, she's an absolutely vital resource. And I know one of those things that really helps to kind of engender and foster trust among people is improved communication. And it's something we heard when I arrived is, whether it was about pay-as-you-go or bond or just whatever issues, it's, that maybe there wasn't enough communication or enough clear communication. And so we, when we did our strategic plan, a big part of that was how well we communicate with folks within and without, and making sure to just transparently share information. And so Kayla does a lot in that world. And I know, Elko High was sad to lose her as a teacher, but, the whole district gets to benefit from the expertise she offers in the communications world. And Kayla's pretty young still and has, this is just the beginning, is how I feel about her. I think she just continues to grow and get better, and I'm excited for that. And yesterday was a perfect example of how absolutely valuable she is, because I was on the road to Owyhee. I was going up there with a few folks from the Legislative Council Bureau, as well as someone from the governor's finance office. And while I was out of service, we had a situation where we had to do a lockout at both Elko High and Grammar. And she was able to quickly respond and get those messages out and work with our other directors to make sure that happened in a consistent manner as to how it happened the last time and how it will happen the next time. And so that consistency, that clarity, and as prompt as we can be, whether it's an emergency communication or a communication about a wonderful event coming up, or our parent guidance resources. We have so much to offer, and sometimes within our own sphere of things, it's easy to say, well, it's just second nature for us. Like, well, of course we have that resource. Of course we offer this. Of course you can just call someone. But for someone who's not, 24/7 living in the world we're in, it may not be abundantly clear what is available and what you have, what we have to offer. And so with Kayla constantly just sharing the good news and sharing the resources and sharing our vision and our goals and all the things we're doing and the successes we're having, it helps to just keep people in the know, and it also helps to combat misinformation or biased information that seeks to put down the excellent work that's going on among the educators in our district. So it's a really long way of agreeing with you that Kayla is amazing.
Well, thanks, CJ, certainly. Yes, and thank you, Kayla, so much. Again, especially this time of year as things really start to ramp up again, and a lot to be appreciative, celebrating the graduates. But two things came, ears perked up when you said lockout. Did you want to tell us about those situations, or just to say they were resolved?
Yeah, I mean, so what I won't do is get into the details of the, what was the cause for it. In our world, when we do a lockout and we don't share a whole lot of information other than we usually use the phrase out of an abundance of caution, or we might say something like due to police activity in the area. The fair assumption is when we say lockout, that means kids are safe. We're just, because of something that's going on in and around, or like around the area, we've just received some advice from law enforcement to, maybe not have PE classes go outside, or maybe just whatever. It's again an abundance of caution. At no point in either of our most recent lockout scenarios has any student ever been directly or imminently at risk of harm. And so when we use that phrase lockout, that's what that means. And then when it comes time to talk about, because I know people are curious, like, well, what was the cause? as much as we do love to communicate, some information isn't ours to communicate. And our sheriff's office and our local city PD do an awesome job of relaying the details of an incident to the extent that they're allowed to. And so we leave that to them, and we stick with we kind of stay in our lane and stick with our realm. And our realm of things is what are we doing to keep the kids safe? They are safe, and school is resuming as normal. And so that's the type of information we share in those scenarios. If something is more urgent or more imminent, then we communicate it in that way. The other really important thing, and I know this was included in the communications, and sometimes it's a little frustrating for people, but the reality is according to not only our emergency operations plan, but every single emergency operations plan that I've ever seen from a school or school district. In those scenarios, I know it's some people's immediate reaction to say, I need to go get my baby. I need to go get my student. However, mandatory protocols in those situations are nobody gets in and nobody gets out. And that's because in those scenarios, we don't necessarily know who the person is or what's going on in the scenario with the police. We are sticking with the information we have, and that is to just keep everyone safe. And so to let someone go, a student, would be potentially putting someone at risk if there's something relatively nearby. And to let someone in, they could have a great story of why they want to get in, but we don't know if that's the person a police officer is looking for, right? So I get that it's frustrating sometimes, but that is a primary safety protocol in those scenarios. And so that's why we put that very clearly in our communications. Please don't come to the school to try to withdraw your student at that time. No one's coming in or out until this is released, until the lockout is called clear. So that's how that happens.
And it's usually for the shortest duration possible, because you said you're working with authorities.
Of course.
It could be that there is a suspect, a person at large within the vicinity.
Yep.
Police might be serving a warrant. That could be, maybe doing a search, a warrant arrest, that kind of thing. And sometimes it could be a custodial issue. So those are just some of the scenarios that have in the past contributed to those lockouts. Okay.
And we always try to defer to professionals in their field. So if it's a medical emergency, we're going to defer to the medical professionals. If it's a police emergency or situation, we're going to defer to the police. Just like when police need to work with us on something that involves a student at school, that they're going to defer to us on how that needs to function within our school. At least we have a lot of respect for the other agencies that we interact with in our community. And so when we get given some sort of a direction or a recommendation of, hey, we really think you should put your school on lockout, then we take that very seriously, and we trust their recommendation because of the excellent work we've seen them do in the past. And we work with them until they tell us it's all clear. And sometimes an all clear, like the most recent one, it was 5-10 minutes, something. It happened very quickly.
It happened very soon.
All right. Mm-hmm. And then other times, I think the one before that was maybe 35-45 minutes. And I've been in a terrible scenario before where I was in a lockdown for 4 hours. Like it really just depends. But that decision is always going to be made from the standpoint of making sure our students are safe. And so, sometimes it makes one of those emergency protocols might take a little longer than someone might think was necessary. Like, oh, did you really need to have it go on that long? And the reality is, in that moment, we are waiting for an all clear from the police, and they are making sure not to give that to us until they are perfectly ready to do so. And we settle and we relax and we wait for that call to come.
CJ Anderson is our Elko County School Superintendent. Thank you, CJ. Let's move on to Owyhee, since you just returned there, and I did want to ask a couple of questions, and then we'll talk about what the most recent news is about the new school. I spoke with a local lawmaker recently, and there were a couple of things. He said, why does it cost $65 million to build that school? And is there a hydrocarbon plume beneath the existing site of the school? The lawmaker said he hadn't seen evidence of that. And this was all in context of discussing what was happening during the legislative session, CJ. So some of it may not be something for you to comment on, but I said, I'll ask the questions.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll start with the last part, and that is there a hydrocarbon plume? Which I think that phrase, I'm going to guess 99 point whatever percent of people would have no idea what that even means, a hydrocarbon plume. I have not been... I don't even know how I would know if there's a hydrocarbon plume, other than I've seen a report that details some of what exists beneath the grounds of the school.
So there is contamination. We can call it that.
And I am in no means qualified to even say more than what I've just said, but I have seen an official report done by a qualified entity that details how that happened and what is there and kind of what type of risk does that pose. Now, what conclusions have been drawn about what that plume can mean or what it has caused or could cause, that is speculation, and that is conjecture, and there's differing of opinions on what the level of danger is from that or not. But I guess as far as evidence goes, I've seen a report. And
you're satisfied with that, so
yeah. But that's not my field of study or expertise, as to know what to do with that report. They took that on to lawmakers, and they made their decisions based off of what they saw.
All right, thank you, CJ. And then the $65 million price tag. I know that I had suggested. I said, well, it is an isolated area. It might be more expensive. We do know Idaho National Guard is doing some earthwork for them, and I didn't think to say, but it is a combined school, even though there are just 300 students. CJ, right? You have to combine a lot of different aspects in one campus.
So it's a combined K-12 school. It's being built for a capacity of somewhere around 400. You don't want to, I don't know what the exact student count is as of today. It's probably somewhere in the range of 325 to 350. You'll have bubbles and pockets where more kids come, and so you don't want to build right to capacity. You want to have some room for growth, and we've seen the downside of building straight to capacity. It's how some of our not even all that old of schools in our county have modulars that are already being used because they very quickly were over capacity. And so that is one element. So it's being built for a little bigger than what their population is. Because it's a K-12 school, that means in addition to classrooms, it will have a basketball gym. It will have a football field. It will have CTE facilities. So it's there's plenty that goes into a comprehensive K-12 school. And I know, and I include myself in the group of people who are like, wow, $64.5 million is a lot of money, because it is a lot of money. I agree with that statement. What I understand is hard to believe, but it is the reality of the world of construction these days, is $64.5 million will not get you super, super far with construction costs today. And I don't have exact numbers to share with you, but for just frame of reference, the new school at Liberty Peak was, and I am giving just some very general numbers, but it's that would have cost us somewhere in the range, is my understanding of in the $30+ million range. Okay, so this school will be bigger and have more complex facilities than Liberty Peak Elementary. They have more students, but it's all elementary classrooms and a gym and a cafeteria, and ta-da. This one, as I mentioned, has a lot of other components to it that cost additional money. Furthermore, since the time that school was built, we know that from the inflation and all the rising costs of everything since COVID, since the pandemic and all that happened, construction costs have gone up anywhere, people say, from 20 to 40%. So if we were to build that same school today in Elko, that one would already be in the neighborhood of $40 to $50 million, and then it is kind of just another rough number that gets thrown out a lot when you talk about going to build something in Owyhee is you can go ahead and just plan on 20 to 30% additional cost because of the isolation of Owyhee. It's 100 miles in either direction from anyone. And so in order to make all that happen, when you start to consider how much costs have gone up just everywhere, consider the isolation, consider the complexity of that building as opposed to a standard elementary school or a standard middle school, for example, and all of what goes into a combined K-12. And the $64.5 million, we are being creative to make sure we do not go over that. Because you could easily surpass $64.5 million, depending on what you want to add in there. And so there's been a lot of consideration about things we will not include. There were, when you get that project, there's kind of a shoot for the moon mentality, like, hey, wow, that's awesome, we got this money. But as you start to go through, you're like, okay, that is not going to go as far as you hoped. So let's talk about this. How are we going to do that? And that's kind of why the tribe has been very creative, and they're doing a great job of finding other people. Like you mentioned, the groundwork being done by the Idaho National Guard. They're finding lots of creative ways to do that. And they're also, from their end, with in-kind work and other preparations for the actual building, doing plenty of work on their own that won't even enter into the $64.5 million. So that money can be put specifically toward the building and the facilities themselves.
And they're saving, right. And then we'll get to the point, too, we'll start talking about furnishing and staffing and all the other things that will happen, too, with a bigger school and a new school.
Yeah, so, and in as much as we can keep, useful technology and furniture and stuff from the old school, that'll the hope is you bring all that with you, so you save some costs there. And it's not going to be this it's not going to be this crazy impressive building that everyone in the country is going to ooh and ah over. It's going to look very much like a new modern school in America. And again, as a reminder, that is, I know we all pay taxes, and so in a manner of speaking, we're all part of paying for this school. But the recent conversations around the money that the county has allocated for capital improvements, none of that is going towards this project. This project very specifically came from funds that were available due to the prosperity of the state economy, and their what I've heard called the rainy day fund, and the governor's finance office and state folks found money at a state level to contribute to this. It is not money that specifically is coming out of the Elko County tax rate or taxpayers. And
I did want to mention too, and then we will switch gears, but I had a very good conversation with the thoughtful tribal council chair leader, Brian Mason, when I was there in Owyhee. And he said, that gets brought up a lot, that we're, why aren't we paying for our school, or somehow it's on a federal reservation. He said, we can't own property. We don't pay taxes because we aren't allowed to own property. Mm-hmm. And let that sink in, listeners, before you get too, concerned about who's paying taxes and who they're prohibited from owning the reservation. So, yes. And again, I thought that was a great conversation with the chairman, Brian Mason. And moving on, did you want to talk quickly just about anything that, since you were there yesterday, how it's looking since the groundbreaking? So I honestly, we didn't go by the site. We were there with some folks who were just trying to get a nice overall perspective of challenges that exist in our schools, and so we brought them out to a remote reservation school. We took them over to Spring Creek High School to see about the overcrowding we have over there. We took them up to Flagview, where we have half of our student population there in modular buildings as opposed to a regular building. So they came out on almost like a listening and understanding tour, and they asked us a ton of questions during the 3 to 3.5 hours of car ride. It was all them listening to our challenges, because these are the folks that advise the legislature and the governor on finance needs across the state. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to just sit with them and talk with them. And Legislative Council Bureau.
Yeah,
Okay.
the LCB. Yep.
That's great, CJ. Yeah, I guess we need to emphasize that. It wasn't just an Owyhee trip. This was a...
No, I spent, Cody Krenka and I spent from 8 o'clock until about 4 o'clock with them yesterday, taking them around and seeing the challenges that exist. And I experience this all the time with all the superintendent things I go to outside of the state. But the way people's eyes kind of widen when they hear about our different challenges, when they hear about how much it costs per pupil to educate in Jackpot, for example, when they hear about our one-room rural schoolhouses, and
as you drove past Independence School,
we said off that way, and we said, okay, we've been in the car for a half hour now, and then off that way another 15 to 20 minutes is a school and we explained what happened. And then after they were done wowing about that, we got up to a point where we said, and also where we are right now, this is where a bus picks kids up to go back to go to Elko every day. And this is how long it would take a 5th or 6th grader to get from this bus over to Flagview. And it was an hour in our vehicle, never mind what it would take in a bus. And so we just really helping them understand, because transportation has been another pain point for us, that we've had to kind of deficit spend a little bit in order to have that 4-year rolling average get to the point where we can properly be funded for transportation, and letting them know how that has negatively impacted us, but how it's also been a necessity for us to function with our budget that way. You hate to overspend on purpose, but if the way it's set up right now is if you don't spend that money, the assumption is made that you don't have a need, which is a terrible assumption, but that's how it's set up. And so we are forced to spend that money for years on end before it's properly funded, and letting them know that that's been our reality for the last few years, and just kind of seeing them be like, oh, wow, yeah, that's a good point. And also highlighting the differences of, don't lump all rurals in together, right? Because what Elko's rural scenario looks like is very different from what, White Pines rural scenario looks like, from what, Lander looks like. And so it was a really great conversation, and there was just a lot of listening and a lot of understanding and appreciation from their side. And it's always nice to be listened to as well when you're frustrated about some things. And there was no judgment, there was no qualifying statements from them, there was no, well, this is why it was none of that. It was just, okay, we hear you, that is a significant struggle. Those are all good things to know as they approach another biennium, and how things might look from a different standpoint. So it was a good visit.
Good. Thank you, CJ. That's more to come on that, I'm sure. And just because we, only have so much time, that we have so much to talk about, but I want to make sure we do get to the science lab, because that was kind of thrilling for a lot of people, but then surprising to others. The school board approved the science lab, even though it's even more money than it was the last time it was bid. Yeah.
So that project was approved on Tuesday night, and a couple important notes that go along with that is, well, number one, very happy for the students of Spring Creek High School and their scheduling and their electives and their classroom space that they're going to have. Those are all good things. In the recent article that was in the paper about it, I noticed that kind of at the end of the header of the article, it mentioned that it was $1 million more than the last time it was bid, and that is accurate. But I'd also like to share some other accurate information to accompany that. Between the last bid and this bid, we were able to acquire over $700,000, close to $750,000 in grant spending and grant funds for that project specifically. Additionally, it was noted in our meeting that the scope of the project, the last time it was bid, was not entirely complete, and the cost of kind of the groundwork and the infrastructure and all that was actually going to be around $200,000 to $300,000 more. So those numbers match up quite evenly with where we. It's not going to end up costing us much more than what the original bid was the last time, because we acquired a bunch of money to fill that gap, and then it was inevitably going to be more that we were unaware of at the last design and bid process. So yes, it's a lot of money. We understand that. The board had to decide, Do we just continue to sit on our pay-as-you-go money, or do we make good on what we've said our priorities are? And their priorities are to provide students advanced CTE pathways and provide them with learning. There is a significant need to address overcrowding concerns at Spring Creek High, not just going into the next year, but projecting into the next few years. The reality is, going back and talking about how much $64.5 million we get in Owyhee. Well, however many years ago we started talking about this, 5 years ago, a classroom addition on the Spring Creek High back then would have been around $28 million. And so if for people who say, well, why don't we just do a classroom addition? Well, if you thought $3, $4, $5 million is a lot, to that $28 million today would probably be in the neighborhood of $40 to $45 to $50 million to do a classroom addition by itself. So we are trying to fiscally address the needs that exist, and kudos to Heather Steele for fighting so long for this project and for going out and acquiring $750,000. The state had roughly $4 to $5 million that they were giving out in this grant, and we got 1.1 of those $4-something million. The only district that got more than us was Clark County. They got 1.6, and they are 30 times the size of us. So the fact that we got as big a piece of that as we did is a credit to the forward-thinking work that we're doing here as far as CTE goes, for the work that Heather Steele put into that, and for the passion that we have behind our CTE programs. The people who award that money did call me ahead of presenting that award and let us know that they are very enthusiastic about the work we're doing in Elko County from a CTE perspective, and they want to support that and they want to reward those efforts, and we didn't want to lose that momentum with them either. And as Dr. Byers said in our meeting, CTE is the future, and he presented a lot of data on that, and it's we're happy to be able to support that project and look forward to having it in place by the end of next year, end of next school year is the kind of the project timeline.
Oh, great. CJ, thank you for the update there. And I know we'll have Heather Steele back on the program. She's CTE coordinator for the whole school district. And as you said, she's just done immense work on this, along with many community partners who are advocating for this lab, which will free up valuable classroom space, as you just mentioned. So we'll detail that in a future program. Thanks for clearing up some of those details. Appreciate that. Of course. And if anything that we could talk about next, I want to make sure, because I know you have things to get to this afternoon, but any new movement on the county capital funds relationship with the county school districts?
We're mostly in the same boat there. We did, I think since our last interview, we did present to the AB 519 county appointed panel and just let them know that we're kind of heading forward with the projects that we've talked about previously in the last quarter. Our school board did approve as priorities for that money the 3 mechanical upgrades at Spring Creek High, at West Wendover High, and at Mountain View Elementary. I thought I was going to forget one. And then a boiler replacement at Grammar number 2. So those 4 projects over the next 2 years pretty much would kind of be the primary focus of the money that would come from that allocation that was made. In my what we're looking at right now is what is the speed at which we can start doing these projects. Do we have, and I'm working, and it was very convenient that I had the gentleman from the governor's finance office in the vehicle with me for a bunch of hours yesterday, because I picked his brain on a lot of that, and he's going to get back to us and help us to figure out, can we get going on it immediately, or do we have to wait till the end of this year for that allocation to work its way through the system? Kind of fine-tooth comb reading the bill and what's allowable, and because we sure would love to just get started on those and get that, apply for that match from the state rural capital improvement fund. So we have identified the projects. We have the kind of blessing of the panel. Our own internal capital improvement committee knows that that's the priority, and that's what we're going with that. And the other county commissioners have already seen what those priorities are and allocated the 20 cents based on those priorities. So we're being very true to what we said we were going to pursue, and those are the objectives right now. And then the next steps are now to, as has been documented, to work with the cities and work with other entities who received some of that pay-as-you-go money, and see what sort of room is there for continuing to get some of that back, so we can do more than just respond to emergency needs with our facilities.
Thanks, CJ. And we know that Elko is being closely watched, not for bad reasons, but for good reasons, as being the pilot program for this. So, as you said, it's nice to have the attention of the state. Well, it is graduation season, so and we are also recognizing teachers and other support staff, people who rock. I know the Nevada Mining Association's been making some awards. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That was fun. I think Kayla shared one with me yesterday. One of our teachers out in our one-room rural schoolhouses out there in Mound Valley, the Tracy Zumwalt. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
She received an award from them, and we have. Thanks to generous donors, we have been able to implement something that I've been wanting to do since the first term I got in here, the first semester, but we've kindly brought it full circle, and we're doing a district teacher of the year award program. And so each of our campuses has identified through their own process who their teacher of the year is, and then among those teachers of the year, we've been able to select a district teacher of the year, and then also both an elementary and a secondary STEM teacher of the year. As soon as we leave here, we're gonna go make final preparations to surprise two of those recipients, and we're really excited about it. We're excited to be able to recognize them, to give them good things, and reward them for all their tireless efforts. And you like I say this all the time, you wish you could give everybody an award. You see so many good things happening all the time, and we love our STARS program for highlighting those people. And any way we can give recognition and appreciation to our staff, we usually try to jump on that opportunity, and so really excited for this, and the expectation is that this will be an annual thing we do, and continue to recognize our wonderful teachers and staff who do so much for our students and keep our schools running, and work closely with families, and are really those frontline heroes every day in our schools.
Well, it's a good thing that our radio program continues every month, CJ, because there's no summers off for administrators. And so I know you'll be back, and we can talk more about some of these amazing things that are continuing. But congratulations again to all the teachers. You deserve a little break, and I say little because I know a lot of you are already back in there cleaning your classrooms, getting organized for the next year, spending some of your own resources. That's why even the smallest financial reward is so appreciated. And if you're a parent and you have a student, think about just maybe asking your student to write a note, or help them write a note to thank their teacher. Because with all the accolades that that we can give them as a community, I think the ones that they appreciate the most come from their actual classroom.
Absolutely. So. And to your point there, the STARS awards that we give out every month, those are determined based off of nominations from you, the parents, from our students, and from fellow staff members. We don't have anyone, I don't run through a list and say, I really like this person, or, hey, they have really good scores. It's not about that. It's about people who are making a difference in so many different ways. And unfortunately, not everybody knows the different ways an impact is being made. But a parent who has deeply felt an impact of a teacher on their student, you might be the only one that knows exactly how that person impacted your life and your student's life. And so unless that story is shared, we don't have an opportunity to recognize that and honor and celebrate that. And so really encourage everyone on our website. You can find the nomination form. You can also just reach out to your principal at your school. Hey, where can I find that form? It's a simple nomination form online, and we are always welcoming more nominations. And even if they don't win it that month, those nominations carry over. Sherry Sanders from Mountain Wells, who we just recognized for the month of May, she had 2 nominations, and one of those was held on to since December of 22. She got that nomination way back then, but then another one came in, and so as those come in, we hold on to them, and so we were able to recognize her. So your nominations aren't wasted. So please do help us celebrate the good that's happening.
Thank you, CJ. Graduation is first week in June for many campuses, so I just
Yep.
want to make sure that by the time we meet again, you will be literally on the road probably. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think our next meeting should be kind of right after graduations. I think the next
Okay.
week after that. So yeah, I'll be happy to talk about what I was able to attend, and
Yeah.
it'll be awesome.
Yep, and celebrate all of our students and achievements because Elko has been busy. No matter what you might hear from certain elected officials, we've accomplished a lot in the last.
A lot of good going on.
A lot of good going on in public schools, charter schools, higher education, learning everywhere, and you're all a part of that success. Anybody who cares about our students. So thank you so much.
Thank
you,
you.
Kayla, for your great work and keeping our superintendent informed. Thank you, listeners, for joining us here on Elko Live today on KELK.